I never wanted to be a doctor. At least, that's what I would have told anyone who asked, though I doubt I would have dared to say it out loud when I was younger. I knew what was expected of me. I knew that being a doctor was more than just a career. It was a family tradition, a legacy, a symbol of success. For my parents, there was no other path, no other choice. Medicine was the foundation of our lives. My father was a renowned surgeon, my mother a respected physician. They had built their lives in this world, and they had no intention of seeing me stray from it. But as far back as I can remember, I never felt at home in that world. I was the dutiful daughter who excelled in every class, every exam, every challenge. But it was never enough. The more I succeeded, the more I felt like I was slipping away from the person I truly was. To them, I was the child they molded, the one who would follow in their footsteps, carry the weight of their expectations. To me, I was suffocating. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate the importance of medicine. I understood it. I saw the long hours, the sacrifices, the lives saved. But it was never my dream. It was theirs. A dream I had no choice but to adopt if I wanted to make them proud, if I wanted to be accepted, if I wanted their love. I was expected to be their shining success story, their perfect reflection. I remember the day I received my acceptance letter from the prestigious Art Institute. It felt like a moment of liberation, a validation of everything I had secretly worked for. For years, I had painted in the quiet of my room, in the silence of the night when my parents were asleep. It was my escape, my freedom. Art was the one thing that made me feel alive, that allowed me to connect with myself in a way that medicine never could. But when I held that letter in my hands, my heart didn't soar. It sank. I couldn't show them. Not yet. I knew what they would say, how they would react. My father's voice thundered in my head, a constant echo of disapproval. No daughter of mine would waste her life chasing dreams of paint and color. He had made that clear when I was younger, during every conversation about the future, every look of disappointment when my interests didn't align with their vision. And yet, when I finally told them, I saw the words I feared reflected in their eyes. "No," my father said flatly, his voice filled with the authority that had governed our household for as long as I could remember. "This isn't what we prepared you for. You have a responsibility to your family, to your future. Art is a distraction." My mother didn't say much, but her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, spoke volumes. I had disappointed her. The tension in the room was unbearable, suffocating. I stood there, acceptance letter clutched tightly in my hands, my heart racing, my mind a blur. I tried to speak, to make them understand. But I got a scholarship. I've won national competitions. They say I'm one of the most promising young artists in the country. Their silence was deafening. "It doesn't matter," my father said sharply. "You think you can support yourself with painting? Look at your cousin William. He tried to be an artist and now he's living in his parents' basement at 35. Do you want that for yourself?" The words hit me like a slap. My cousin William, the failed artist, the cautionary tale they always used to steer me away from my own dreams. I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. "I'm good at it," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm really good at it." My mother, always so poised, always so controlled, stood up from her chair. "You're good at science, too. Top of your class. Perfect scores. That's your true calling, Sophia. You're meant for something greater." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them everything. The years I had spent painting in secret, the gallery owner who had seen my work and offered to represent me, the fire that burned inside me every time I picked up a paintbrush. But I knew it would do no good. To them, success had only one definition, and it wore a white coat. It didn't matter what I felt, what I wanted, or what I dreamed. I had been molded for a different life, a life I had no say in. I remember standing there, the acceptance letter crumpled in my fist, the weight of my decision heavy in my chest. I had a choice to make. I could defy them and risk losing everything, my family, my place in their world, Or I could give up my dreams and follow the path they had set before me. In the end, I chose the latter. I chose to live a life that wasn't my own, all in the name of family, of loyalty. I wrote to the Art Institute, declining their offer. It felt like a betrayal, like cutting off a part of myself. But I didn't have the courage to stand up to them, not yet. Instead, I accepted my place at Preston Medical School, the school my parents had both attended, the place where they had envisioned my future for as long as I could remember. But I couldn't let go of my art. The passion was too strong, too vital to my soul. So, I made a decision that would change the course of my life forever. I would live a double life. I would be the perfect medical student by day, the dutiful daughter they had always wanted me to be. And by night, I would be Aurora Knight, an anonymous artist creating in the shadows, hiding my true self from the world. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Medical school was grueling, demanding every ounce of my energy, every waking moment. But in the quiet hours of the night, I would sneak away to my small studio, the only place where I felt truly free. There, I would pour my emotions into the canvas, the exhaustion, the frustration, the resentment. I would paint as if my life depended on it, because in many ways it did. And so began the next chapter of my life, a life divided between two worlds. One where I was Sophia Anderson, the perfect student, the dutiful daughter, and one where I was Aurora Knight, a secret artist whose works would one day sell for millions. The world saw only one side of me, but I had become someone else in the quiet moments, someone more real, more alive than I could ever be in the glare of my parents' expectations. But no matter how much I achieved, no matter how much success I found in my art, I knew I could never share it with them. They would never understand. And that thought haunted me every single day. There was a certain kind of peace that came with living in the shadows. At least, that's what I told myself in the beginning, as I balanced the weight of two separate lives. In the daylight, I was Sophia Anderson, a diligent medical student, my every move scrutinized by professors, my every success celebrated by my parents. By night, I was Aurora Knight, a mysterious, anonymous artist creating works that would later sell for millions. To the world, these two identities were strangers. One a future doctor, the other a rising star in the art world. They were both pieces of me, yet neither felt truly whole. Medical school was grueling. Every day it felt like I was submerged in a world that wasn't mine, trying to breathe in a place where the air was thick with the expectation of perfection. But somehow, I thrived in it. The pressure to succeed became an anchor, keeping me grounded even if it was in a world I didn't quite belong to. I studied tirelessly, acing every exam, winning the approval of my professors, and gaining the admiration of my parents. They were proud of me, and their pride was like a shadow that I carried with me, always looming, always present. But even as I excelled, there was a part of me that was suffocating. I was becoming someone I wasn't. Someone who fit perfectly into the mold they had created for me, but not someone I recognized when I looked in the mirror. At night, I shed the persona of the perfect student, the dutiful daughter. I would slip away into my studio, a small, cluttered room in the basement of an old building I had rented under a pseudonym. It was the one place where I could breathe freely, where I could be the person I longed to be. Aurora Knight was born in those hours. On canvas, in the quiet solitude of my studio. The first stroke of the brush was always the hardest. It was a moment of rebellion, of defiance against the life that was being forced upon me. With each line, each color, I was shedding the weight of the day, the expectations of those who could never see me for who I truly was. My art became my escape, the only place where I could truly express myself, the only place where I was free. And then something began to happen. The work I poured my heart into, sometimes with tears, sometimes with frustration, sometimes with exhaustion, started to resonate with others. It wasn't just a release for me. It became something more. People saw something in my work that I didn't even know I had. It wasn't just the beauty of the brushstrokes or the intensity of the colors. It was the raw emotion embedded in every piece, The vulnerability that I had learned to conceal in my everyday life but could no longer hide on canvas. My paintings became known for their emotional depth, their precision. Critics spoke of how they captured the essence of human nature, how they had a clarity that felt almost clinical in its precision, but were somehow more alive than anything they had ever seen. What I didn't tell anyone, what I couldn't tell anyone, was that every brushstroke was a piece of me that I was giving away. Each painting was a confession, a quiet scream into the night, a surrender of the parts of myself that I couldn't bring into the world. It was the only way I could reconcile the two parts of myself. The part that was expected to be a doctor, a success story, and the part that was an artist, a dreamer, someone who needed to create. The first major breakthrough came after my second year of medical school, a period that had been both exhilarating and draining. The sleepless nights studying anatomy, memorizing medications, and attending endless lectures felt like an unyielding tide that I could never outrun. But during those nights when I found time to paint, my art became a reflection of my struggles, my triumphs, and my hidden despair. One painting, in particular, captured the essence of that struggle. It was raw, visceral, the colors almost bleeding into one another as though the canvas itself couldn't contain the emotions I had built up over the months. When it sold for $180,000, I couldn't believe it. I remember standing in my studio, staring at the empty space where the painting used to hang. My heart raced. I had just made more money than I ever thought possible, all while pretending to be the model student in the world of medicine. I wanted to tell someone, anyone, about the success I had achieved. I wanted to share my joy, my accomplishment, but I couldn't. I couldn't let my parents know, not after everything I had given up to live their dream for me. Instead, I let them call that night, congratulating me on acing my latest exam in pathology. They couldn't have known that the call was coming from the same girl who had just sold a painting that would change her life. With each sale, the secret grew heavier. My paintings began to attract attention, and the mystery surrounding the artist only fueled their allure. Aurora Knight became a sensation in the art world, an artist whose identity was a mystery, whose work seemed to speak directly to the soul. I was hailed as one of the most exciting new voices in contemporary art, but no one knew who I was. I was just a name, an enigma that made people want to see more. It was a game, a dangerous, thrilling game that I played, but one that weighed heavily on me. Every painting was a step further into a life that my parents would never understand. The pressure to keep my identity hidden was exhausting. There were times when I thought I would break, when the strain of living two lives became too much to bear. But somehow, every night in my studio, as I picked up the brush again, I found the strength to keep going. The exhaustion of medical school, the demands of my parents, the pressure to succeed, they all found their way into my art. And with every stroke, I felt a little more like myself, a little less like the person my parents wanted me to be. I had learned to thrive in this duality. The art world knew me as a successful, mysterious artist, and the medical world knew me as the diligent student destined for greatness. My parents, oblivious to the success I was building in secret, continued to shower me with praise for my accomplishments in medicine. They didn't know about the paintings that sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't know that I had already made more money from my art than I ever could have as a doctor. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep it that way. Every moment of success in one world felt like a betrayal to the other. Every time my parents congratulated me on my medical achievements, I felt the weight of the lie I was living. But I kept painting, because I had to. I didn't know how to stop. Art was the part of me that I couldn't let go of, no matter how much I tried to bury it. It was the part of me that I could never fully express in the sterile, demanding world of medicine. And so, under the cover of darkness, I kept creating. I kept building the world of Aurora Knight, one painting at a time. And then something unexpected happened. The world began to notice. A painting I had created during the most exhausting stretch of my medical career, a piece that had been born out of sheer frustration and exhaustion, was purchased for $2 million. It was placed in the lobby of the hospital where my parents worked, under the initiative they had been championing for years, healing through art. The irony was not lost on me. My mother, standing there beside me, critiqued the painting with surgical precision, completely unaware that it was my work. She wrinkled her nose, dismissing it as nothing more than splashes of paint. My father, in his usual pragmatic way, muttered that at least it added some color to the place, though he would have preferred they spent the money on new equipment. And as I stood there, listening to them, I realized that they would never understand. They would never see the art I created for what it was. Something that could heal, something that could speak to the soul. To them, it was just paint on a canvas. They couldn't see the hours of anguish, the struggles, the frustration that had gone into each piece. They couldn't see the part of me that was lost in the world they had created for me. But I was beginning to see something else. Maybe it was time for me to stop hiding. Maybe it was time for Aurora Night to step into the light. The decision to reveal the truth to my parents wasn't something that happened in a moment of impulsive emotion. It wasn't an angry outburst or a desperate cry for freedom. It was slow, like the gradual erosion of a cliff face, where each wave of doubt and frustration chipped away at my resolve until there was nothing left to hold the facade in place. For so long, I had played the role of the perfect daughter, doctor by day, artist by night. But the pressure was becoming unbearable. It was no longer a question of whether or not I could continue. It was a question of whether or not I could live with myself if I didn't come clean. It started with the painting in the hospital lobby, the one I had created during a grueling 36-hour shift at the hospital, the one that my mother had dismissed as just splashes of paint. As I stood next to her, listening to her critique the work with the same clinical precision she applied to her surgeries, I felt the weight of the irony press down on me. My parents had spent their entire lives in this hospital, building their legacy, saving lives. And here I was, having unknowingly funded one of their most cherished programs through my art, yet they couldn't see it. They didn't know that the money from my paintings, from the world they couldn't even begin to understand, was being funneled directly into the very institution they loved so much. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my art had become something larger than just a private escape. It had become a bridge between two worlds that had always seemed irreconcilable. The world of medicine, where my parents lived and breathed, and the world of art, where I found the freedom to breathe. Each brushstroke I made was a testament to my struggle, my internal conflict, my search for balance. Yet I had kept this bridge hidden, even from the people I loved most. How could I continue living in this double life when the truth was so glaringly clear? But fear held me back. The fear of disappointing them, the fear of losing their love, the fear of being cast aside as a failure. I knew how they would react. My father would be cold, rational, dismissing me as foolish. My mother, ever the perfectionist, would be hurt and disappointed, unable to comprehend how I could have chosen such an uncertain path. Even though I had built my success in the art world silently, anonymously, I knew that revealing the truth would shatter the image of the dutiful daughter they had worked so hard to shape. I would no longer be their perfect Sophia. I would be someone else entirely, a stranger to them, a mystery that they might never accept. But deep down, I had already made the decision. The time had come. The lie had become too much to bear, and the secret I had kept hidden for so long was no longer just mine to protect. It belonged to both of us now. The version of me they thought they knew, and the version of me that I had come to accept as real. The evening of the Metropolitan Museum of Art unveiling felt like a turning point in my life. I had arranged for a grand reveal, the first time that Aurora Night would step into the public eye, revealing her true identity as Sophia Anderson. It felt almost poetic in a way. The artist, the doctor, standing side by side in the same moment, in the same space. But the moment I had envisioned in my head felt far less glamorous in reality. As I prepared to face my parents, I could feel my heart beating wildly in my chest, each pulse a reminder of the stakes. This was it, the moment where my two worlds would collide, and I had no idea how either one would come out of it. I had requested the night off from my medical duties at the hospital, something that was completely out of character for me. The thought of stepping away from my responsibilities made me uneasy, but I had no choice. For the first time in years, I was putting something else first. Myself. My truth. My life. My supervisor didn't question me. The flawless record I had built as the perfect medical student earned me this small reprieve, but I wasn't thinking about my medical career as I slipped into my dress, one I had designed and hand-painted myself. The dress was a piece of my art, a physical manifestation of the world I had kept hidden from my parents, the world I had built under the alias of Aurora Knight. When I arrived at the museum, the air was thick with anticipation. The crowd buzzed with excitement, rumors swirling that Aurora Knight, the mysterious artist, might actually make an appearance. I stood there in the midst of it all, feeling strangely detached from the spectacle. My parents were there, standing near the entrance, looking uncomfortable in their formal attire. They had no idea what was coming. They hadn't seen me yet. But I could feel their eyes on me, and I knew that once they did, everything would change. I approached them cautiously, my heart in my throat. The museum director was still speaking to the crowd, the microphone amplifying his words, but I couldn't focus on that. All I could think about was the moment that was about to unfold, the moment when I would finally reveal who I truly was. The curtain was about to be pulled back, the veil would drop, and there would be no going back. When I reached my parents, I spoke softly, almost as if I was speaking to myself. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." They turned, their eyes narrowing as they took in my appearance. I could see the confusion in their eyes, the disbelief. My mother's expression shifted from surprise to something else, something I couldn't quite place. Her lips parted as if she were about to say something, but nothing came out. My father's gaze softened for the briefest moment before hardening again, his professional demeanor taking over. They had never seen me like this, dressed in my own creation, standing before them as someone who was both part of their world and entirely separate from it. And then, the velvet curtain that had been concealing the painting fell. It revealed my truth to the world, and with it, my identity. I said it then, in the stillness that followed the unveiling. I'm Aurora Knight. The gasps from the crowd were deafening. The flash of cameras filled the room with light. But all I could hear, all I could see was the look on my parents' faces. My mother was pale, her lips trembling. My father stood there, frozen, his jaw clenched. For a moment, they didn't say anything. The silence was unbearable. I wanted to explain, to tell them everything, but I couldn't find the words. They had built their lives around the idea of who I was, and now that image had been shattered. But then something happened. Dr. James Morrison, the head of the hospital board, pushed through the crowd, his face flushed with excitement. He looked at my painting in awe and turned to my parents. "The painting in the lobby," he said, almost breathlessly. "That was you, wasn't it?" I nodded, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. My father's face went pale. His mind was racing, processing everything. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "How many other paintings?" he asked, his voice rough. My gallery owner, Marcus, appeared beside me, ever the efficient businessman. 38 major pieces, he said with a smile. Total sales nearing $40 million. The shock was palpable. The room seemed to hold its breath as my parents tried to process this new reality. My mother, ever the pragmatist, was the first to speak. "You've been lying to us all this time?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but the hurt in it was unmistakable. I could feel my father's eyes on me, his hands trembling as he reached out to touch the painting. "The anatomy," he muttered, almost to himself. "It's perfect." The realization dawned on him, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that I had never seen before. Admiration. "You've been learning from me all this time," he said quietly, not just with a scalpel, but with a paintbrush. That was the moment everything changed. It wasn't the public revelation of my identity that shifted things. It was the understanding, the recognition that the two worlds I had fought so hard to keep separate were not as incompatible as I had once believed. My father's voice, rough with emotion, was the final confirmation that I had been seen for who I truly was. Not just as a daughter who had followed their path, but as someone who had carved her own. In that moment, I realized that I didn't have to choose. I could be both. I could be the artist and the doctor. The two worlds could exist together if I let them. And so, with a single breath, I finally stopped pretending. Sophia Anderson's journey is not just a tale of balancing two passions. It's a story about the courage to live authentically, even when the world around you expects something entirely different. For most of her life, Sophia was trapped in a gilded cage, constructed by her parents' dreams for her. They saw medicine as the only path to success, and they imposed their vision of the future on her from an early age. Despite her deep love for art, Sophia believed that she had no choice but to follow their expectations. She lived in a constant state of tension between the life they had planned for her and the life she dreamed of. A life where she could paint, create, and express herself freely. Her decision to attend medical school was, in many ways, a sacrifice of her own identity. But at the same time, it was the beginning of a quiet rebellion. Sophia didn't just conform to the path laid before her. She found a way to stay true to herself. Under the alias Aurora Knight, she secretly created a successful art career, selling paintings that would eventually earn her millions. But for years, she had to live a double life, balancing the demanding world of medicine with the fulfilling world of art, all while hiding her true self from her parents and the people who loved her. The turning point came when Sophia realized that the life she was living was no longer sustainable. The lies she had been telling her parents, her friends, and even herself had grown too heavy to bear. The moment she stood before her parents, revealing her true identity as both a doctor and an artist, was a moment of profound transformation. It wasn't just the unveiling of her art at the museum. It was the unveiling of her authentic self. In that moment, she stopped hiding, stopped pretending to be someone she wasn't. She embraced both sides of herself, allowing her passion for art and her dedication to medicine to coexist. This moment of truth was not just about Sophia's career choices or the success she had achieved in secret. It was about the deeper realization that we are all multifaceted beings, capable of pursuing many paths in life. Sophia's story shows us that we don't have to choose between our dreams or live up to the expectations of others. We can find ways to honor both our personal desires and our responsibilities. Life is not a binary choice between two options. It's about forging your own path, even if that path looks different from what others expect of you. What Sophia's story teaches us is that authenticity is the key to true success. For years, she lived in a world of contradictions, torn between the version of herself that her parents wanted and the version that she longed to be. But once she embraced her full identity, once she found the courage to reveal the truth, everything fell into place. Her art, which had once been a secret, became the bridge that connected her to her parents and the world in ways she never anticipated. She no longer had to choose between two worlds. She learned that she could be both. She could be a doctor, a healer, and an artist, a creator. This lesson is incredibly relevant in today's world, where many of us feel the pressure to conform to society's expectations. We are told that success looks a certain way, that there is a single path to fulfillment, whether that be in our careers, our relationships, or our personal lives. But the truth is, success is not a one-size-fits-all model. It's about finding what truly brings us joy, what aligns with our values, and what makes us feel whole. It's about embracing all the parts of ourselves, even those that don't neatly fit into the boxes others have created for us. Sophia's journey is a reminder that we don't have to choose between our passions and our obligations. Whether you're an artist, a doctor, an entrepreneur, or a teacher, there is room for all your dreams to coexist. The key is not to hide parts of yourself to fit into the mold of what others expect. It's about being brave enough to show up as the truest version of yourself, to embrace the complexities that make you who you are, and to pursue the things that make you feel alive, even if they don't fit neatly into societal expectations. As we move through our own lives, we must remember Sophia's story whenever we feel torn between different paths or responsibilities. We all face moments when we must choose between the life we've been conditioned to lead and the life we truly want. The lesson is simple. Don't let fear, judgment, or the pressure of others' expectations stop you from being who you are meant to be. Whether you're an artist, a doctor, a writer, a business owner, or anything in between, your passions and talents are worth pursuing, no matter what they may look like to others. So, as we wrap up this story, I encourage you to take a moment and reflect on your own life. Are there parts of yourself that you've hidden away to fit into someone else's vision? Are there dreams you've put aside because you thought they weren't practical or possible? Remember that you don't have to choose. You can create a life that honors all the different parts of who you are. It may not be easy, but it will be worth it. You deserve to live authentically, to embrace your passions, and to pursue what truly makes you happy. If you found inspiration in Sophia's story and want to continue exploring stories like this, filled with powerful lessons and personal growth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps us motivated to bring more meaningful content to you, content that can help you navigate your own journey toward authenticity and success. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to sharing more stories that inspire and empower you to live your truth.